Hello, welcome back to another live stream. So there's a topic that I started discussing over the last number of years, and I have some videos on it, which is around budgeting and some personal finance tips. So I thought I would revisit that. So I've done a video so far about a very simple way to budget for people who are beginners, for people who are free spirits and don't like something too strict. So in my description, you'll see a link to that. But this particular video, it's the budgeting method based on one of my absolute favorite finance books, which is The Barefoot Investor. So this particular video focuses on this type of budgeting. So I'm basically going to talk a little bit about how to budget based on this book. And I'll be sharing some notes around it and a bit of a discussion. So let's dive in. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so how to budget the Barefoot Investor way. So as mentioned, this is a little bit stricter than the other method, which is according to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad method. But this budget essentially involves you splitting your money in percentages, but a few more buckets. So one of the things that the author talks about is to think of your money. It goes into your account, but we have a tendency to just spend maybe a bit too much on some things, and that doesn't leave enough for the important things that come along, like bills. But at the same time, the budget allows for enjoyment, because there are even stricter budgets, which will be the last video I'll discuss another week. But in this particular budget, he allows for splurging and spending on things that make you smile, etc. So that way it doesn't feel like you're on this budget that's suffocating you. Because often people don't like the idea of budgeting because it feels like it's just too hard. I want to enjoy my money. I work so hard for it. So essentially, we will now basically go into like what these buckets are and how he names them, and therefore what their purposes are as well. So the first bucket and the amount that he recommends is what he calls your blow bucket, and he recommends 60% of your income go in there. So what that means is for every $100, it's $60. So in other words, 60 out of 100 is essentially what it means. And you can literally just use a calculator to work this out, which I will show you in a moment. Let's just talk about what exactly is the blow bucket. So the blow bucket is for your general day-to-day expenses. So petrol, food, rent, bills that come up, utility bills, etc. So it's for just your day-to-day necessities for getting by. It doesn't include things like dining out, that sort of thing. So he has a separate bucket for that. And so why does he recommend making these buckets? It's so that you don't splurge one day on a dinner and then you suddenly get a bill and you're like, oh my God, I didn't budget for this bill and now I'm stressed. I'm going to have to use my credit card and now that increases my debt, etc., etc. So that's just something to be aware of. So that is the blow bucket. So basically, I'll just make a note here. So everyday spending, but not dining out. But we do have a bucket for that, and that is what he calls the Splurge Bucket. And he recommends put 10% of your income into the Splurge Bucket. So example, so that's $10 out of every $100 is going to splurge. So if you make $1,000 a week, so that means splurge will be $100 a week, and whereas $600 a week is for your rent and everything else. So in other words, when it comes to splurge, that's where you can enjoy your money. Therefore, it's to help you not feel like, oh my God, I'm budgeting, I have to sacrifice dining out. As long as you've got your money in your splurge, that's what you're allowed to spend, essentially. So that is that. So this is for things like, well, as the name suggests, e.g., dining out. So coffee is a contentious one. So I guess I'll leave that up to you where you would fit coffee, because I guess if coffee is something you just cannot, live without, then you could use it out of your blow bucket. I can't actually remember what he said about coffee and where that fits. I'll have to review the book. But otherwise, if you are like, I have a bit of a coffee addiction and I do want to, kind of curb it a little bit, then that's where you can budget for your coffee with your splurge bucket and just be like, okay, what do I have in my bucket? Okay, I can spend a bit of money on coffee, but just not go crazy of like 4 coffees a day, for example. So so dining out, and what else can we say about splurge? Like sort of, clothes, new clothes, and then things like electronics, that kind of thing, electronics, etc. So that is a splurge. So then there's one that's similar to splurge, but he calls it the smile bucket. So I'll talk a little bit about what the smile bucket is. So the smile bucket is also 10%. So that's the same amount as the splurge bucket. So the smile bucket is, as the name suggests, it's things that make you smile, but they are like medium to longer term expenses. So for example, saving for a holiday, saving for a house, so things that you dream about. So what you dream about that makes you smile. So, e.g., holiday, your first home, etc. So basically every pay you're putting aside a little bit of money, so that eventually that will build up and grow and allow you to then guilt-free enjoy a holiday, or if obviously like a house will take a little bit longer, but if you do this consistently over years and years, you'll be surprised how much you actually can save and what you're actually able to achieve with your money. So that's the smile bucket. So then the last one is something that he calls the fire extinguisher. So the fire extinguisher is for things like bigger goals. Actually, I just realized I made a mistake. So the house is not in smile. This is more like for a holiday. It's also things like a wedding, that sort of thing. But fire extinguisher is for something that's even more longer term. So it is for example, paying off, your credit card debt. So let's just first put in what this amount is. So it is $20 out of every 100. So this is for basically longer term goals. So e.g., credit card debt, paying down your credit card debt. This could be like for a home deposit. So these are things that essentially obviously will take a lot longer. So that's why it's a little bit more, but again, it's just about that consistency when it comes to putting aside that money. So let's just see if there was anything else relating to fire extinguisher. No, I think that's it. So there's one more account that he talks about, and I'll just put a little asterisk with this one, but he calls it your Mojo account. So he doesn't include it in the sort of what you put aside on like a fortnightly basis, bi-weekly, or however often you get paid. But he actually talks about the importance of the Mojo account when it comes to things like, unexpected like expenses, like for a rainy day, basically. So the Mojo account is essentially your rainy day fund. And in this instance, he just asks you to put aside just a set amount. So this is just like kind of like a buffer. So essentially, it's like so it's a rainy day fund. It's your safety net. So from memory, it is just $1,000 basically. So it's just a set amount that you aim to put your money in first, and then after that you start to then put in consistently for all of these other things, in particular, like for example the fire extinguisher, that kind of thing. So the idea with the Mojo account is that he titled it Mojo because I guess for those of you who aren't Australian, Mojo means like just getting your groove back, because when you are hit with an unexpected, sort of like crisis, let's say, God forbid, you are in an accident and now suddenly, like there's, maybe the insurance premium, or it could be repairs of the car if you don't have insurance, etc., etc. So the Mojo account, just having that money that you do not touch, but it's there in case of the rainy day, it allows you to get your mojo back quickly versus you're super stressed. It sets you back so much. You kind of have to cover this massive expense, and that means you have to delay paying a bill, and then you have to keep pushing back the bill, and it sort of becomes this flow-on effect. So he basically talks about, I guess, the importance of that account when it comes to just getting your groove back versus just being just in this rut of just financial stress, like constantly from one thing to another. Because on that note, like, often when we talk about bills, people are, oh my God, I forgot about this bill. And, it's unexpected and I haven't planned for it. And, but really, if it's like a regular bill, your water bill, your electricity, etc., it's not really unexpected. It comes out at the same time. So really, it's about really making decisions to put money aside for that, which is what all of this is about, having the blow bucket so that you've got that money ready for those bills as they come along. But then you've put money aside that you can still enjoy in your splurge bucket. And then for, really rewarding yourself for doing this and for just working hard, you've got your smile bucket to, go on that holiday you've been putting off because you're like, I can never just afford it. But yeah, so that is just a little bit about how to budget according to the Barefoot Investor. So just as for the question of so what exactly am I doing in terms of these buckets? Like, how do I get these buckets? So what he recommends is creating separate savings accounts. So I don't know if you're aware about this, but if you go into your online banking, you can actually create savings accounts, and you can actually give your accounts a nickname. So in the case of things like fire extinguisher. So this is something you don't really want to touch. You just want to put that money aside and then use that, to pay off your debts or save up for a home, etc. So that would be an account where you probably don't really want a card attached. So it's just to, you might be tempted to use the card, sometimes. So that's to help us, I guess, curb our kind of weaknesses, I guess. So that's just something with the fire extinguisher. However, with the ones where, so probably the same with the smile bucket, you probably want to have it not connected to a card, so you can ensure that money is being saved and not as easy to access. However, with the blow bucket and the splurge bucket, you could have it in an account where you have a card attached. So then, because I remember I used to work for Apple for over 8 years, and I remember serving a customer lunch, and they gave me their card to pay, and I noticed on their card they put a little, like a label, Splurge, and I looked at them and I'm like, have you read the Barefoot Investor? And they're like, yes, I have. And so they were kind of one of the Barefoot Investor community who were applying this, and they're like, yes. So they had saved up for this electronic device, and they had enough to be able to purchase the device, and they literally had a separate card for splurging. So that's a little bit about how you do this. But if you want to learn more, obviously there is the book. In my description, I've got a link to the audiobook that you can, if you're not really big on sort of reading. So I actually got the audiobook myself, and I found that just as helpful. In fact, I found it so helpful, I ended up buying the physical book just so I could have something to refer back to. But the audiobook was really enjoyable. So I don't know if you know too much about the book, but it's one of my favorite finance books, especially because of how it's been written. It's written in just the most easiest, funniest, enjoyable way. So it's quite unique for a finance book, because most finance books are quite dry, and you kind of have to be a nerd to really get your head around it. But in the case of this book, it's honestly amazing. Like, from the first page, I was just laughing, and I was super engaged with just how he actually shares his story, and therefore how he comes to craft this method of budgeting that still allows people to feel like they're enjoying their money, because often that's what deters people from budgeting, is they feel like they're so restricted and they can't do this long term. So this is a little bit more, I guess, involved as a budgeting method, where you do have to do a little bit more. You have to create multiple accounts. You have to, be disciplined and calculate how much do I actually put aside in this versus this. Actually, on that note, before I forget, how do you calculate? So I'm just going to share my screen again. Give me a moment. Okay, so let's just talk about how to calculate, just for those of you who aren't maths gurus. So how to calculate. It's really easy. So, for example, we'll just use the example of 60%. For example, 60% of my pay. So whatever the number is, percent-wise, you just add a zero, or you divide it by 100. So if you remember in school, let's just show you. So 60.0. So 60% means divided by 100. So remember in school, you move the decimal point twice to the left. So that means that this is equal to, this is equal to 0.60. So you just simply multiply that, 60, by your pay. So for example, let's say you get paid $2,000 a fortnight, 60 times 2,000. So that is, my mental math is really bad. I know some of you who are nerds will be like, it's so easy, but since the invention of technology, I rely on the calculator, unfortunately. So that is 1,200. So yeah, that's how easy it is. So anytime you have any kind of percent, you just go decimal point, move it back twice. So it's 0.10 for 10%, times that by whatever you want to get the percent from. In this case, it's 2,000, and then you'll be able to get that result. So that's just how to calculate for those of you who aren't the best at sort of maths, but it's super duper easy. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for those of you who dropped in. I hope that was useful. But yeah, please do share in the comments if you are already a Barefoot Investor community, member, or if for those of you who aren't, if you've tried this, how it sort of felt. And yeah, please do also like and share if you found this helpful. Thank you.